Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
I think it's appropriate that with today's episode that I quote from the great Fee Waybill himself. I was a punk before you were a punk. You don't believe me? Just step outside and see me, brother.
Okay, then.
I I'm lying, Steve. I wasn't a punk.
And welcome to Two Guys Wearing Orange Sweatshirts and T-Shirts, our weekly broadcast where we like to wear orange, but also we like to discuss records. And I am Steve, a record collector.
And my name is Jim, and I like the color orange, but I own a record store, which there seems to be a lot of orange around me. I think that's my favorite color. Kudos on the sweatshirt today, too.
Yeah, it's cold. It's a warm and toasty sweatshirt available at Radio Wasteland
It
Records.
is, and you could go hunting in it.
Yes, you can. Not get shot,
There
hopefully.
we go. Well, on today's episode, we are going to foray into the wonderful, enlightening, very light and fluffy and warming feeling of punk rock. How does
There
that
we
sound?
go.
And
I couldn't think of anything better.
there we go. We originally, we're kind of calling this a punk for beginners, but I don't really like going into saying these are the essentials because we've talked about that in our essentials episode by saying,
Yeah.
okay, these are the ones that we feel are essential to our collections. And I think that's where we're going to go today with some punk albums.
Yeah, it was very difficult, especially for me because it's like my genre, and there is a lot in there. But even as I was going through this, I go, you know what? I need to find an original in this. Oh man, I need to get this one. And so, hey, maybe I finally have grails lined up for the year that I didn't think I had.
Just because you're stopping and thinking about these punk albums. And for me as
Exactly.
well, I like punk rock, but I've found that I lean a little bit more toward the fun punk or even the more alternative side of things than I do just straight up hardcore punk rock. Even though I do have a lot of that on my phone, I don't have a lot of that in my collection on vinyl. So that was kind of enlightening for me.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I like a lot of screaming and angst.
You
It
are an
goes against
angsty
my person.
individual.
Yeah, exactly. It goes completely against my personality. So maybe that's how I get it out.
There we go. You're exuding that punk rock aura.
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
around you. Well, before we get to that though, as this is the Vinyl Community Podcast, each and every week we'd like to talk about our pickups, the additions to our ever growing collections. And I'm trying to maintain that, but that New Year's resolution isn't working on my side very well, and I don't think it is on yours either.
I did much better this week.
Oh,
This was
oh
kind of a
cool.
light week.
All
If
right.
I hadn't got in a care package from Radio Wasteland, I would have. I almost went back to that one shop on Friday that I got that Muddy Waters,
Yep.
but suddenly my grandson was sent home from daycare. Something about throwing up, though he
Ew.
seemed perfectly fine all
Hmm.
day long. So I went over to watch him and didn't get theirs. Saved
Ah.
myself some money.
Maybe he just wanted to
But
hang out with Grandpa.
he did. Well, I got him all weekend long. Actually, my son's
There
there,
you
but
go.
mom's on a ladies retreat. So
There we go. So what you got
but
this week?
I picked this up. It's in that Stephen Wilson keeps putting these out. Jethro Tull. This is live bursting out. And it is really three CDs, three DVDs, or Blu-ray, or whatever they call them now. But the book is just so good. What makes this one special is this was the first Jethro Tull concert I went to in
Cool.
college. It was the Busted Out tour, so it special that way for me. As far as when you rank Jethro Tull albums, this one's usually toward the bottom by a lot of people, but for me, it's not, and I really like that. So yes, that was. I have most of these. But Jethro Tull's my favorite. Once I got into the 80s, though, I kind
Yep.
of lost interest. Then, from Radio Wasteland, he got in The Sacred Mushroom.
Oh, yep.
And this band is out of Cincinnati. And a few years back, this was just all over the vinyl community. Everyone was talking about this. And it was done by Shake It Records. This is my original, not my original Sacred Mushroom, because those go for over $200. But Shake It Records is in Cincinnati, a small place, and a wonderful record store, and they were putting these out. But this actually, I think, came from Italy when I was looking right.
Yep.
And so it's an Italian press, but it's official. But just blues rock, psych rock from 1969. Really good stuff. I mean, this is just a great album, and I've been needing a cover. So when Jim brought those in, I go, hey, there's my cover.
It's
Plus
one of those
extra album.
One of those rare instances where you get the vinyl and the new cover that matches your old one that you lost in the flood.
It does. Oh, so it's wonderful.
You've got a backup piece of vinyl there.
You know what's interesting though, Jim, is the spine. So they didn't fold this right, so the wording's right up here.
Oh wow. Okay.
It wasn't quite.
It missed the printer.
Oops. Yeah, it did. It did. But maybe that's a misprint. It'll be worth thousands.
Ooh, there you go. Like the original.
Exactly. And I ordered this from Jim. This is the Ravenettes Sing. I'm a big fan of the Ravenettes. It's a two-piece duo out of, I believe, Denmark. And they do on here. What sold me on this is they sing Goo Goo Muck.
Okay.
But it's a almost more romantic version of Goo Goo Muck.
Oh, truthfully, Steve, any other version of Goo Goo Muck could be considered. I mean, maybe not romantic, but the original one is that's the best.
Yeah, but this group, they have these early rock and roll kind of it's what they really like, because they do like Leader on the Pack on here, Shaking All Over, so they go back to the 50s, early 60s. But also you have like Venus and Furs and Return of the Grievous Angel from Graham Parker. So they go all over the place with this. So
and they're really kind of a fuzz guitar garagey sound with the Ravenettes.
Very much fuzz guitar garagey, yes. And they both sing. Just a favorite group. So that came out last year.
Very
Happy
cool
to get that. And then Jim was nice enough to send me the Resurrected Bloated Floaters. And what's even better, it had a Kmart. I cannot believe Kmart actually sold this thing.
I may have thrown that in as an extra from something.
Yeah. This actually is very good. I believe in 1987 is this from. Just some good rock, but some kind of a little country tinge at times, maybe a little folk, but I spun side one last night, and I really, really enjoyed this thing. And just the most bizarre title in the whole wide world. I mean, for a name of a group, a one and done. So
now I'm trying to remember when I looked that up, and I thought, man, Steve might like this. Was it calling it swamp rock at some point? Is it akin to the Cramps?
I didn't really get a really crampy vibe out of it.
You didn't get the Cramps.
No, I didn't get the cramps, but I did. Yeah, I felt just fine. No pain. But I just found it a good listen. It's in my wheelhouse, shall we say?
Good. I thought it might be. That's why I kicked it your way. I thought, hey, Steve might get a kick out of this.
Yeah, just the title alone does it for me.
Make your Halloween records.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Jim? What'd you find?
A light week of sorts, nothing new, so to speak, but ones that have been kind of fly. I've talked again the past couple of weeks about the older collections that I'm finally getting to in the back room here, and I had found some of the records that I set aside. I've got a couple of real cool psych rock ones that popped that were set aside that I finally got around to listening to and saying, yes, these are a keeper. But first up, because you did this last week, I'm going to kick one out here. I have a book. I don't read nearly as much as I'd like to. I used to read a lot, and I know you did. Yeah. You still read a lot. I don't.
Yeah.
And Kim got this for me. I think I put it in. It was supposed to be way before Christmas, and then she found it. This is called, let me kick this over here. This is called On Track Rush, 1973 through 1982. Every album, every song, and the author on this is Richard James. And what's kind of cool about this is the fact that this is essentially, it's a breakdown of everything early Rush from their first singles, from their first 7-inch singles, all the way through Signals. I believe that's where it kicks through in '82, if I recall. I have to remember exactly. This is kind of neat. Yeah, it goes all the way through Signals. It's different because it's not just a gushing saying this album did this album did this. It's actually a technical breakdown of every song on every album sequentially from the very beginning. And by technical breakdown, I mean, they get into time signatures, they get into keys, they get into the style of, guitar solo and the vocals and where it went. And they give a little history on each of the songs as well. And what's more is that it gets a little editorialistic on this as well. The author goes into saying, okay, like for example, the first album, Rush from 1974, not a great album until you get to the song Working Man, which is the one that propelled them further. He doesn't really hold back. Even their original single, their first single that they put out prior to that, before Neil Peart got on here, was a cover of Don't Fight It was the B-side. It was I think it was a Buddy Holly on there as well. I'd have to now see. I'm going to have to look here, because I've had this and I'm trying to remember which one that was. Finding My Way. No, that's off of there. Not Fade Away. Okay, Buddy Holly. Not Fade Away. It was a cover of that just did not resonate. It wasn't very good, and he doesn't hold back on here. He says, "Yeah, this wasn't very good." So,
okay, so that's not for just the casual Rush fan. It's more a little more in depth.
I'll send it to you when I'm done if you'd like. I'm only up until the first album because I got it yesterday, and I'm only one album deep. And this is going to be an interesting take, I think, as I go through the discography to see what folks like. But I thought I knew stuff before, but now I may know more. So we'll see what happens. On the vinyl side, just a couple of things. I picked up a copy of Yesterday's. This is a compilation album from Yes. And you can already see why I may have grabbed this. It's a promotional DJ copy of Yesterday's. And by compilation, I mean, it's just got some, we can't really show the back there too much. It's got some kids doing stuff back there. But the full-length version of America, Sweet Dreams, Then Survival. So not a lot of the big Yes stuff, but still cool. And the promotional DJ, you guys know I'm a sucker for that. So that's kind of where I pulled that in. That was a fun one to get. Okay, onward to these two Psych albums. And they're both rare Psych, and they're both, I think, a little bit different in the way that they present themselves. This first one is from 1970, and it is a group called the Mandrake Memorial. And I was really hemming and hawing on this one. It's a very cool cover. You can see just kind of the design. It's a Unipack cover. It's still kind of cool. I hate Unipacks, but you got to kind of get into them in that way. Discogs list this is straight up psychedelic rock. From 1970, as I mentioned. The Mandrake Memorial, they are from Philadelphia, active from 67 through 70, and known for their Baroque style of sound and unique songwriting. What I got off of this, and yes, it's psych rock, and I think we've talked about how psych can be puzzling, puzzling at times, is the fact that some of this is just straight up blues guitar. This is one of those albums that can't seem to make its mind up where it's going to go. There's other stuff on there that gets almost King Crimson-like in their experimentation. And then there's like one song that's full of religious, almost Gregorian chanting as you go through there with like a pipe organ. So this is all over the place, but it is very intriguing. It's not a super expensive album, but the high end floats around $250 or so, but median range comes in around $50 or $60. But still kind of a neat one. It's gonna take a little more getting used to, because it also, and I'm gonna do the pun here, it's got some shades of Deep Purple in there from time to time as well with that organ and sound and a heavier guitar. So
it sounds hard. It sounds hard to dance to.
It would be tremendously difficult to dance to. So,
be more interpretive.
There we go. It's like King Crimson's my jam, man.
Yeah,
it's a cool tune, but you couldn't shuffle your feet to it too much. Okay, next up is the band that played at Woodstock that nobody remembers. There's a few of those, I think, but here's one. And I'm not tremendously up on Woodstock lore. I'll admit that right now.
Neither.
But I had to do some reading on this one. And yes, these guys played at Woodstock. This is a band called Quill. And this is from 1970 as well. And Quill, this is the only album they ever put out. They're an American psych rock group from Boston, Massachusetts. They played extensively throughout New England and most of the mid-Atlantic states. And most notably, they performed at the Woodstock Festival. But nobody knows. I mean, maybe you do if you're a Woodstock aficionado. Some very cool stuff on the inside of that gatefold. But what happened was, in reading up on this, these guys played Saturday at Woodstock. They were the first act to play that day in the Woodstock Festival. And it was right after that horrible torrential rain, just overnight, soaked everything, turned it all into mud. They took the stage just after the rain ended. So there was still water everywhere. The sun had just broken through, and these guys got up, and I think they rocked like a 40-minute set on stage. The film cameras had malfunctioned, and they didn't get these guys with their sound synced up right on film. So subsequently, they were cut. They were cut from the motion picture about Woodstock. Right after they played, Santana came on. They had fixed the film equipment. Santana was part of the film, and that launched them into the stratosphere. So you got to ask the question, had these guys been able to be a part of that film, would they have been able to make it past one album?
Yeah. Yep. Wow.
Never known. Never known. This is more straight up psych rock. It's really good stuff. I enjoyed this. Very jam bandy. I mean, not too far from Santana, but without that Latin flavor, I guess is the way to put it. And this is actually, it's a little bit more on the prog rock side too, even though it's psych. Discogs even lists it as prog rock. And I would say that these guys kind of kick in a little bit of that sound with the yes in through there as well, but still fun stuff. And so this is kind of a neat ad.
Here, I thought you were going to say, yeah, they got the stage and they got electrocuted.
Not quite. I think they fixed that, but you know, had they been in the film, who knows? They might have been able to go a little bit further. But to that point, again, I'm not professing to be an expert on the Woodstock Festival at all.
Yeah.
I know some of the bands that were there. I've got the Woodstock album. I enjoy it, but I had no clue that these guys were a part of it. So I'm sure there's folks that do.
What I remember about Woodstock is it's probably about 11. I went by the movie theater and they had the poster that was playing in the movie theater of Woodstock. And the rumor was there's naked people in that. And so we're all just kind of staring at, wow, that's what I remember.
We can go from there. Well, as we do every single week, we'll put together a Spotify playlist of some of this music that we've talked about adding into our collection. I checked, and Quill is at least in there. I don't know about Mandrake. I know Yes will be in there, but I'll find out and see. But we'll put together a playlist not only of the stuff that Steve and I have added to our collections, but the punk albums that we are about to go through. I think we're in for just a raucous playlist this time around. Going to have to kind of sit back and make sure it's turned way up and the neighbors are not annoyed.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, exactly. Wow.
So punk rock, Steve. I got to say that I was kind of and I think you'd mentioned this before too, a little bit of a latecomer to this. My very, very first foray into punk rock, and I don't even know if it was going to be punk, would have been the Cramps. And we'll talk about that because it's not really a punk rock group. But at the time, you know, in the early 80s, we didn't have tons and tons of subgenres with which to classify things. It was either rock and roll or jazz or classical or country. And then everything else just kind of fell into, well, I suppose this is going to be punk.
Yeah, now it seems like the whole thing is, can I create a new genre? You know, it's so confusing. Genre of the week is, maybe that should be upcoming for the whole year. We'll just do genre of the week, and we can go on for a few years.
What's the new one? I mean, you can break this down. There's you get into the more metal stuff, especially the more current stuff, which I think that in the 80s we would have considered punk rock, and now it's going to be, well, this is math rock, or this is speed metal. Okay, but it's got that punk flavoring to it regardless. And as I mentioned leading into this, I pulled all my punk albums, the ones that I think are super important, ones that I think are essential to starting and understanding a punk collection. And I found that I've got relatively few of them. The majority of the punk stuff that I go to resides on my phone, on playlists, or on my iTunes or music or whatever they're calling that now. And I've got a lot of stuff on there that I enjoy. I just don't have that in vinyl.
Yeah, obviously I'm the opposite. I have a lot in vinyl, but there were more things I found that I truly would like to get, like the Minor Threat behind you. And so as I as I
Hmm.
was yeah, as I was digging, yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Not the first
Uh
press though, because
no, I
it's got the
know.
words in the back.
I know how much that first press goes for.
Yeah. Yes.
I'd have a, "Hey, honey, don't worry about buying a house. I got Minor Threat. We're okay."
We're doing ramen for the next couple of weeks. Is that okay?
Yeah,
But
there we
listen to
go.
this.
Yeah. But yeah, 82 is when I first heard my punk. But when you look at these different lists and stuff about punk albums, they'll have like Talking Heads. I,
Yep.
are they?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, they were at CBGBs, but television. Some might consider it, but I consider them almost a genre of them own.
Yep.
When you think of punk, it's like Ramones, Sex Pistols, stuff like that, but there is so many kind of offshoots. It's confusing as all get out.
Where would you put the history of punk rock? Because there are some, not necessarily punk albums, but I think you go back into the late 60s, early to mid 70s, there are definitely some punk songs that artists you wouldn't have thought have that kicked out. One that always kicks in my brain is the Beatles doing Helter Skelter. I mean, Helter Skelter is a punk rock song, just straight up. It's driving, it's violent, it's in your face, and it doesn't let up. And I think that by all means, that's an early example of punk rock from a group that is not a punk group in the Beatles.
I agree. You could even go when you look at some of that garage rock, like the Trogs Wild
Yeah. Oh
Thing.
yeah.
I mean, definitely. Question mark in the Stereos, 96 Tears. It's garage rock, but when you think of punk, where do they go? Garage rock and some of that 50s. That was a lot of their inspiration. Let's go back and bring some of this back. We'll just speed it up some.
And I think that's where the Stooges come in, especially too, right? You've got
Yes,
that garage.
exactly.
We've talked a whole lot about. And let me call this one up here. We've talked a lot about the Michigan sound and how that kind of defied explanation. So the Stooges, they're self-titled. I Want to Be Your Dog in 1969. That very sound is garage, but it's sped up. It's more just. I don't even want to use the word grinding, but just aggressive, I think is the best word to
Yeah,
put. It's a very
aggressive.
aggressive sound that these guys, I think, were one of the pioneers about that with that. And we're talking, what is this? 19, I forget my year on this one. Remember exactly? 69, 70.
Was seven. Yeah, anywhere between 69 and 70. That was the first one, 69, I think.
Okay. Yep.
So with you're right. That definitely is. They always say Iggy Pop is the god. The
Godfather of punk.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And followed by him, you had the New York Dolls
Mhm.
coming in that were considered very punk. Well, that's when Malcolm McLaren came over and he's doing them, but then he sees the Ramones and go, oh, well, that's interesting.
You get the New York Dolls too, because then it becomes the introduction of glam, which then leads to the likes of David Bowie.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, exactly. The New York Dolls were trying to anything to catch attention, and
Yeah.
Bowie was already doing the Bowie thing with the dresses, but the Dolls were like, okay, what can we do here, and can we walk on high heels?
More, can you sing in high heels and dance
Yeah,
around on
yeah,
stage in that?
uh-huh.
So where do you think punk rock really began to form, and what bands really began to say, okay, this is genre in and of itself? It's not technically garage rock. It's not the Beatles doing a one-off
Yeah,
or somebody else doing a one-off song, but a full out straight up album that is aggressive. It is violent. It is politically motivated. It's punk.
yeah. I would have to not necessarily politically motivated on this, but in '76, that Ramones' first album, I
Yep.
think to me that is the official starting point of here it comes.
Yep. I used to own the Ramones, that album, and I think Rocket to Russia, I think, was one of my favorite early ones, and I gave that one up. Yeah, the self-titled
Yeah.
Ramones. I've since relegated myself to a Ramones greatest hits because it's, when your songs are 2 minutes, you want to get as much out of it as you can.
Well, I just showed a Ramones greatest hits on my Sunday show today, so there we
Yes, I
go.
saw
The one
that.
that
Yeah.
I got, but yeah, this is one of my nice originals. So,
So you think that the Ramones came out of that New York sound as well, and CBGB's was a big part of launching them into what they had. But yeah, their sound was remarkably different than the Talking Heads, remarkably different than, I mean, even Blondie had some of the punk moments coming through
yeah,
that sound as well, but that she morphed into more of I hate to say the word disco, but some of her stuff ended up disco-ish, even though that punk
hmm
sound was very prevalent through there in the early stuff.
yeah. The first two Blondie albums actually I like a lot because they are much more aggressive, more punk oriented. Songs like "Ripper to Shreds." I
Yep.
mean, okay then, that's really good. But and also right at that same time, you had Richard Hell coming from television because Tom Verlaine did not much care for Hell in television because he. Richard Hell wanted to keep taking the spotlight, jump around and do all that kind of stuff. And Verlaine was more, no, I don't want all this action going on. And so, again, and Hell really came up with the whole look. Again, Malcolm McLaren saw Richard Hell and all these ripped up safety pins on his stuff and go, well, I got an idea. McLaren was excellent at that kind of stuff. And so he brought it to England and ta-da are the Sex Pistols.
Yep, I was
Yeah,
just gonna say that's exactly I think where you're going with this.
yeah, exactly.
This is probably one of the if somebody's saying, I think maybe I should get into punk rock, and if we were to say, okay, essential ones, you'd put this up on that list, wouldn't you? To say that
I
this is a
would.
starter one.
That's like one of my all-time favorite, probably top 5 albums of all time.
Mhm.
That one there, because it's aggressive, it's fast. It's not super fast, but I mean, it's biting. I mean, social commentary. It's incredible.
So never mind the Bullocks. Here's the Cesspit. Yours is different. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah.
You've got the
This,
original, right?
yep, I have an original. This one here's a Japanese press though.
Okay. And mine is a 1977 US, but they had moved it to that pink cover by that time.
Yeah.
Still not worth. I mean, it's not a terribly inexpensive album. Even the pink covers, they can float around 40 or $50, as I recall.
Yeah. And at the same time that that was going on, this little band was taken off too. They started though as the 101ers, and which was kind of a rockabilly rock, but getting more and more punk, and then they just took off.
And
And
the Clash is one of those ones I think as well that really expanded their musical horizons in a lot of different directions. You're right. It was that Brit punk, but then they got a little ska-like at times, didn't they?
yeah, reggae was really big, ska over there, and so they liked the sounds of it, and away they went. And where Ramones stayed the same, just
Yes.
like here's what we're doing. The AC/DC of punk. The Clash kept expanding their sound, changing it up.
Now, and I mentioned too, I actually showed this. My Clash collection is now relegated to a triple LP. This is such a great music on vinyl
That
release, by
is
the
a
way. The
good one.
Clash hits back, but you do get that wide range of everything. I mean, right from their safe European home, yeah, that's probably the Guns of Brixton, all the way to Train in Vain, which is not really a punk song at all. It's still political, but you just don't feel that punk through there. Police on My Back or Rock the Casbah, really almost popish in there. And I'm going to upset some Clash
Yeah.
fans by saying that, I know, but yeah, these guys run the gamut as far as the growth of their sound throughout their time.
Yeah, and I think that's what helps make them exciting, though. And they got more and more popular, but a lot of the punk fans are starting. Oh well,
Yeah.
and, even myself. Their first, I think, up through Sandinistas, I really, really love, and then I kind of fall off.
And see, that's where it gets for me. I do enjoy some of their other hits back. I enjoy
Yeah.
some of the Clash hits, but I also kind of dig where they moved. Who was it? Was it Strummer that went to Big Audio Dynamite? And
Yes.
I enjoy the Big Audio Dynamite sound because that's a very, I don't want to use the word electronic, but it's almost a poppy ska sound that you got at Big Audio Dynamite that you would never have guessed grew out of the Clash.
Yeah. And then he formed the Mescaleros that
Yep.
took more of a world beat type sound. And he brought in a lot. And truly interesting guy, and made some great music with his groups.
So back to the United States now. If we were going to say, okay, we've got New York and we've got London, this is between the two really the birthplace of the co-birthplace, if you will, of punk rock. The New York sound kicking it out. The Ramones really leading the way, and you get the Sex Pistols and the Clash over in the UK. Let's not forget the West Coast of the United States and what happened there into the mid to late 70s with the likes of, and I know where you're going here, right? The Dead Kennedys.
Oh, yeah. That was one of them. Right there we go, from 1980. This
again, the alternate covers.
Yes. And when you think about kind of hardcore comedy.
Yes.
You could say that. I mean, these guys were satirical. Jello Biafra, satirical as all get out. But, their guitarist, East Bay Ray, man, that guy could play. And he had licks. And it created the rage. But the album's hilarious.
It is.
Quite honestly.
And collectible, you've got the one with the heads. Mine is headless on the back, which denotes the reissue, not a late reissue, but yeah, Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables was not my favorite of the Kennedys, and I will always lean back to Frankenchrist.
Because of the poster?
Well, the poster. We're not going to show the poster on the podcast today, folks, but if this is one of those things, if you know, it's got the warning. I found my copy's got the hype sticker on there that says banned. The inside fold out of this record cover is a work of art by H.R. Giger that some people may find shocking, repulsive, or offensive. Life can sometimes be that way. So it is, but musically, I've always found this one, I think, a little more approachable, even though it's still punk rock.
Yeah. It just doesn't have Holidays in Cambodia.
No, which is the standout on Fresh Fruit, right?
Oh my God! Yes.
Now you mentioned, and this is, I'm going to really kind of throw. I know we're not going sequential as we should be here, but you mentioned that the Dead Kennedys were satirical. So where do you go if you want to make a band and some punk rock that's satirical of a satirical punk rock band?
I talked to the Milkmen.
Yes. I got the T-shirt today and everything. Yeah, the Dead Milkmen were really, they took the ridiculous. I don't really think that the Kennedys were as ridiculous in that they still had a serious nature, but Jello Biafra's attitude, I think that's the punk rock attitude of he doesn't give an F, and he's very political, and that comes through. Then you've got the Dead Milkmen making fun of that person who's making fun of punk rock. These guys are, I think, what I would, and I have referred to before, as fun punk. Yeah. Like, it's not as aggressive, but it is aggressive, but it's just it's so ridiculous that some of it defies a lot of explanation. If you've not listened to the Milkmen before, I would put one of these two albums, they've got 4 or 5 of their early ones that are all good, but I'd put Big Lizard or Beelzebubba from the 80s into really kind of a must at least listen to. They're not for everybody. And by standards, there's some stuff on there that would not fly today as far as lyrics go. Same thing obviously with the Kennedys. But the standout from Big Lizard has always been Bitchin' Camaro. When I did radio in college, that was a staple. That was played often. Hey, man, where are you headed? Versus right off the bat, Punk Rock Girl off of Beelzebubba is almost a punk rock anthem in and of itself now, simply because it just makes fun of that entire genre in a way that the Milkmen only could. And just to show this off, I think I've showed this before, Steve, but I've got some of my goodies on through here, which include the original Punk Rock Girl cutout.
That's nice.
That they sent to, I put you on there. They sent this out to the radio stations of the time and I kept mine intact, where you could have the entire paper doll cutout and have yourself a very own punk rock girl.
Now, so the Dead Milkmen, you would not have the Dead Milkmen without this group. the
Buzzcocks.
Buzzcocks.
Yep.
Talk about pop punk. This was
Yep.
their album. Oh man, when did this one come out? 1979, I believe this one came out. Obviously, Orgasm Addicts on there about teenage angst, but they have the ultimate breakup song on here. Let me see if I could find that. It's called "Oh Shit." It's the ultimate breakup song, but this group was a lot of fun, and this they made catchy, super catchy songs, but they were punk. But really, pop punk was kind of came with this. This would be on my list of things probably to look for this year. Originals of Buzzcocks. I used to have some of them, and I've lost them, and it's an important group.
Speaking of originals, and I'm happy that you found this, and I would someday like to find this as well. On that punk rock genre, we go to the Descendants, and I think you do have an OG of
I
Milo. The Milo Goes to College. This is such a fast album. It's over and done because when you deal with 2-minute songs or less in a lot of these, they go through. Would you put this in the comedy punk side of things? I think it is at times, but it isn't.
It is. It is at times. I mean, they did look at things. There was, they were aware of what was going on and talked about it, but they also like to have fun. And it came out in 1982 as Milo was heading off to college to get a degree in biology.
Yep.
Which he did. And so off he went. But it's also considered pop punk.
Yeah.
If you read through it. And so it definitely has that. They spent time looking, kind of talking about middle life existence. I mean, the middle class existence is what I want to say. And you had such songs as "I'm Not a Punk" on here and "Suburban Homes," where they just kind of went after it.
I think "Suburban Home" is one of my favorites, especially off this album, obviously, but one of my favorite Descendants tunes. I want a house just like Mom and Dad. It comes through there.
Yeah.
And there is a Descendants documentary floating around on the streamers that talks about their rise. But when it comes to the Descendants, and this is the one OG I still have, and that's the album All. And I'm trying to remember, they toyed with another name. Weren't they called All at one point as well? I'm trying to think from that doc they were saying that. But yeah, this is the album All by the Descendants, and it's got a couple of great songs in there like Clean Sheets and Coolidge, I think was just really cool. This was the continuation. This one was 1987. This is also college radio fodder for me. And I tend to like this more than I dug into Milo Goes to College, even though they're both great albums. This one I still have my OG on, which is very cool.
Yeah, that's really nice. We we talked about ska. When you talk about ska and that, you have to Bad Brains.
Yep.
New York, not New York, Washington D.C. hardcore scene, but these were some African American Rastas that put this thing together, and I mean, really hardcore, very very political on what they were doing. That's from they're both originals, I guess here, but thanks to these kind of guys, you get groups like this that came out in the 90s from 1995, Rancid.
Yep.
And you think about, Out Come the Wolves. This is definitely a lot of ska, reggae inspired music, thanks to these guys. And so you get a lot of that. Of course, this one, used the album cover from, what group is that? I keep wanting to say Minor Threat. Maybe it is Minor Threat that had that album covered.
I have to go back and think, too. I'm trying to remember now.
But they took it from that to use it. It might be it, but kind of important band as far as taking punk in a new direction.
Can you see the influence there as well, moving to bands like Rage Against the Machine, where you would say this is a little more metal oriented, yet still has those foundations from Bad Brains?
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy with that. Yeah, Rage definitely went metal oriented, but that Rage, all in capitals, is what they were all about, and I like that aspect of them.
On the ska note, and I don't have that one pulled, but you go back to the UK, there's numerous other examples of that. But the Specials were another one that it was ska straight up, but it really
Yes.
had a punk flavor to it, and their type of work. Always
And they're
enjoyed that.
usually, and they're usually put in with the punks on
Yes.
there. Yeah. Yep. Good point.
What about Husker Du? Where do you
Oh,
zen on those
yes.
guys? Let's call up your
Husker
Husker
Du.
Du, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I have this one here, their concept album,
Mhm.
Zen Arcade. It's a 2-record, 45 song, I believe, not 45 songs. There's a lot of them. Concept album of a kid leaving home and heading to the city. And so considered to be one of their best. My favorite is actually New Day Rising,
Mhm.
but most critics would say this is a great place to start. Fast, loud. What makes Uskadu nice is they are loud, but there's melody.
Mhm.
And they could write songs, but man, they scream, they're growling, they're going at it. Bob Mould and Gary Hart, I believe, just take off. So yeah, Flip Your Wig, I have that. It's just one of my favorite groups. Of course,
Now,
Bob Mould.
yeah, the Bob Mould solo stuff and his work with Sugar is another avenue. I would really consider his solo stuff. Well, obviously he came out of Husker Du, did a solo album and workbook, and then moved into the Sugar project for a couple of albums,
Yeah.
and then back to his solo stuff. But I've always considered that a little bit more heavy alternative, more the college
Yes,
radio.
yeah.
I don't know as if his solo stuff, even Sugar had really kind of a pop feel to it, a pop punk feel, but
But
really more
that's what he
alternative.
yeah, that's what he added to Uskadu. He was the pop guy, and
Yeah.
he knew how to really make hooks, and very good at it. So it's always layered in there, which always made it interesting, that group.
And I think both of us we've talked about those Bob Mould box sets that they lured us into a few years back. Those things carry some heft and weight, but it's everything you'd ever want from either Bob Mould solo or Sugar, and coming right out of the Husker Du era.
Exactly.
On the college, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you might recognize this one.
Okay, yes, that's actually next.
Yeah,
There we go.
I spent time. Yeah, this is a nice original. I spent time trying to tell Jim, are you sure you're still listening to that, Jim? Are you sure you're still listening to that? Are you sure you still want that? Because it was one of my originals I lost during the flood. But
Yep.
there's 45 songs going quick and fast. But
For those just listening, we're talking about the Minutemen, double nickels on the
Good point.
dime. And the
Yeah.
story with this goes is the famed punk collection, of which Steve replenished, I think, a lot of his stuff. We brought in that punk collection several years ago here, that had the Minor Threat, it had some Misfits, it had several Gang of Four, which I kind of regret passing out to the place, but the Minutemen were on here as well. And for me to end up with two original Minutemen in the short time we did meant one for you and one for me.
Yep.
Sorry, folks. But yeah, now it's different. This is a different kind of punk because I don't want to use the word experimental often, but it kind of drifts away in some songs on there.
Yeah, it does. They go to funk. To folk, to country, rock. They are all over the place, but they keep the punk aesthetic of very short, very fast.
Well, that's why you fit so many songs on a double LP here.
Yeah.
This one too is still to this day, if you find the originals, that is no slouch whatsoever on Discogs. They tend to be a little pricey, but still fun.
It is.
One of the other crossovers for me, and this, I don't know, Steve, I'm going to have to say early on, this got the punk moniker because there wasn't really anything else. And I'm talking the Violent Femmes and their first album. Different enough, but still, I mean, college radio now for me, you can't call it jangle pop. You can't call it, I think, anything other than alternative, but it had really kind of that punk feel. These guys out of Wisconsin, just Blister in the Sun and Kiss Off, for example, and, To the Kill, all greats added up in particular, great punk songs, but are they truly punk in your opinion?
Yeah, I have a hard time putting them in with the punk. To me, I think that's the start of college. One of those beginnings of that.
So we're talking 82 here for the original.
Yeah.
And, subsequent Violent Femmes, I think we may have talked about that before when we talk about how bands that can never really capture the the lightning from their first album. This is most
Yeah.
definitely one. I love this album. I have their next two albums, and they're just not go-tos as often as the first one
Yeah.
is. But
True.
I think at the time, yes, it was college radio, but it still had enough of a punk flavor for me to be, I'm going
Yeah.
to consider this and say, okay, this is punkish. How's that?
Well, speaking of
There you
punkish,
go.
Black Flag Damaged. And this thing, a major record label thought about putting this out, but they said it was too anti-parent. Well, not only is it anti-parent, it's anti-police, it's anti-beer, it's anti-TV, it's just the anti-album, man. These guys just ripped it up, and this was a great second press, Jim. I believe I got this from you,
Yep.
and there was my original on that, which I'd love to get an original cover, but maybe someday. But I mean, this again, California hardcore punk.
Yep.
They have TV Party Tonight, which is of course just outstanding song. But yeah, these guys really tore it up. And Henry Rollins, man, he was like this muscle-bound screamer. Holy cow!
And I didn't pull it as well, but my foray into that came from the Repo Man soundtrack, which had a lot of great punk. It had a lot of great alternative on there as well. But yeah, Black Flag featured fairly prominently in there. And another one I didn't pull, and I kind of wish I had now to show it off, would be the group Fear. And either they're let's have a war or more beer or something like that. I've got that album. It's just real great aggressive stuff. Also, and I don't have one in my collection, it's on my phone, is the group Killdozer, or the Butthole Surfers, for example. We're getting into that vein of just, it's not alternative because it's too heavy and too vile. I'm not saying violent, I'm saying vile in some cases. But it's not really punk because it's almost experimental, especially when you get into the likes of the Butthole Surfers or Killdozer. One of my favorites, and I only have this digitally, is Killdozer doing a cover of My Way, or they also do a cover of One Tin Soldier, which is just, songs you wouldn't think would be, that's right up there too with the Sid Vicious cover of My Way, which I know you dislike tremendously.
Yes, I do.
I got that wrong. Okay, Killdozer did not do a cover of My Way. It was a cover of Neil Diamond's I Am, I Said, which just is growling and slow and just beating and like that. I love that song, and I don't know if I'd go so far as to get it on vinyl because I love that song.
Yeah, one of them.
Killdozer is a good one to look up if you get a chance. I'll find them and put them in the playlist too.
Yeah, with hardcore, these guys are. This is a Wire Pink Flag, and this is when you think of hardcore. These guys really made the blueprint for a lot of hardcore that came out. 23 songs done in 35 minutes. Again, this was a band that had so much to say, and none of it was happy, sunshiny. But it was fast, it was loud, but I mean, it was well done. They knew what they were doing and could really play their instruments well. And I just think it's a phenomenal one. And look, I've got a bullet hole here. You see that? There's supposed to be someone shot.
Holding it off to the side and hoping for the best.
Yes.
Now, I couldn't, the hardcore side of things is not, this comes after, mere moments after I say, oh man, Killdozer and the Butthole Surfers are cool. I'm going to say I'm not so much into that hardcore side of things when it comes to the punk. Bad Religion is another group that I do enjoy, but the only piece of vinyl I own from them is their Christmas album. So, and it's a song, it's an album of traditional Christmas music that we talked about a couple of weeks back that I just absolutely enjoy. But I do have a lot of Bad Religion stuff on my phone. I just never popped that one into the vinyl side of things.
Yeah. I never thought I had a lot of hardcore because I wasn't into it. But man, I actually do. I'm just like, what the heck? Well, I bought this from Jim also.
Yep.
This sat at Jim's place for quite some time. Wasn't the cheapest album, and I kept looking at it and looking at it when I would go in and visit. And it's the Misfits, Walk Among Us. I always forget about the people on Spotify. Sorry, all you. And but the Misfits, Walk Among Us, and he had this just beautiful original. I mean, OG of this sucker, but this is horror punk. And what made it, a lot of the hardcore groups were all very political. They're talking about everything going wrong. These guys, nah, they come in with I turned into a Martian, Vampira, hate breeders. Mommy and I go out and kill tonight. I mean, fun stuff like that. Very much horror punk,
Yep.
but hardcore and just an absolute classic when you think of that genre. They make the Cramps seem like cute and cuddly.
To bring the Cramps in. Yeah, there's the horror punk side of things I think I've got a couple of albums from the Michigan band 3D Invisibles, which are along that, but they're a lot more alternative, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The Country Bob and the Blood Farmers that I talked you into when we went to the record show a year or so back was also another example of that crossover between horror punk and swamp rock.
Yeah. I showed that 3D, one of those 3D and Invisible albums, and one of I think it was the singer, wrote to me on my YouTube channel.
Wow,
goes,
cool.
Well, that was real nice of you to say that. And I go, wow. You never know who watches.
They're just over in the back. I should have go grab those. Hold them up again. They're fun stuff. We mentioned the Cramps and the swamp rock, and let me come back on this one.
Mm-hmm.
When I first discovered these guys, it was before I went to college. So I'd not been exposed to the newer stuff like REM, the jangle pop and the alternative. So this, for me, right off the bat, got thrown into the punk rock category because I just did not know. But the album cover from the Cramps, Bad Music for Bad People, I know it's a compilation, not one of their original ones, but the cover drew me in, the music kept me in, and this is an album I have had in my possession since probably 1982. So fun stuff there. But you wouldn't consider
an OG.
Yeah, you wouldn't consider punk.
No, I guess it can. It's psychobilly. It's probably a punk genre, but I never. Yeah, I don't know. I will say this is from Australia, the Stranded, and I'm Stranded is the name of it, out of Australia. I believe 1976. No, 1977. Fantastic punk out of Australia. And then out of Ireland, you had Stiff Little Fingers and Flammable Material, which is one of my all-time favorite punk albums. It's so raw, so aggressive, but it's not hardcore. But the vocals are just, I mean, they come at you and just pulverize you. Wonderful stuff. And that was a cool thing, punk was going everywhere, and you can find these kind of, which both of these albums are classics and well worth picking up.
The punk collection, we've talked about this a lot before. I think when it comes to collecting punk albums, it can be a difficult one because the genre itself, with the exception of a few big name bands, they didn't press a lot. They were a little more rare. And so the collectors that had them held them. And a lot of times they took care of them. And when we did bring in that punk collection several years ago, I just remember you were like, your eyes bugged way out and you're like, holy cow, what did you get? And it wasn't a large collection. I think there was, if I recall, maybe around 1,000 or just right around there. But it was such primo stuff that you never, ever see at record stores.
Yeah. Or record shows or anything. It was the perfect thing for me coming out of that flood that I needed to get my collection that I love back on track. And it wasn't the cheapest thing in the world, but I couldn't have been happier, man. That was great.
It wasn't cheap on the record store side of things either.
Yeah.
I'll let you know. But it was one of those things that you can't pass up. If you are on the record store side of things, you see something like that come along once. And I've gotten lucky with different genres, one in the punk, one in the psych, and then one in that huge classic rock one that I brought in before too. But to see the punk one is amazing, and it's neat to get a hold of these and to listen to them, but it's not something that everybody's going to collect right off the bat.
Yeah, I think I was Midland's punk guy.
You were the punk before we were all punks in this case.
Yeah, exactly. I just had a couple of some brand new punk groups
Sure.
to show real quick for those. If you are looking at punk, you want to, something brand new. This came out last year, but the group's been around. It's called High Vis is the name of the group, and this was Guided Tour. This was one of my top albums of last year. It is just some incredible punk music, but again, enjoyable. It's not going to come at you and scream at you or anything. These guys know what they're doing. They play very, very well, and they have something to say. High Vis. Out of Australia, this isn't from last year, but Emil and the Sniffers. Last year, a lot of people put her album that came out as one of the top albums of the year, especially in the punk group. I didn't buy it. I have a couple of her earlier albums, but she really knows how to come at you really hard. And then out of New York City, a group called The Men. And The Men are putting out a brand new album this year. I think in March it's coming out. This came out a couple years ago. Very, very popular in punk circles, I should say. But it's just another great punk band, hard rocking band, but the punk aesthetic is there, and that's the feel you get to it. So, I mean, three wonderful groups that are out there doing now. And there's a ton of punk bands, but those three really know what they're doing.
And it's neat to see, too, that modern music can still hold on to some of that punk ethos going in, and it's not splintered off into math rock or hardcore.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of that now, I think. You've got some of the more pop punk bands, and I know, like Paramore.
Green Day.
Yeah, Green Day, Paramore, and those can head into that. Green Day's they're the Muppet Babies of punk rock, I've been saying. So
yeah.
Be careful there. But it's neat to see. I've got one more to show, Steve. This is not, I would not put this on an essential list. This is just something fun for me because of my old radio days and the fact that I would carry Dr. Demento when I worked on radio. We played that show. Several years back, I found the Dr. Demento Covered in Punk compilation. And this is a triple LP. I've got to really open this up carefully here because it's got a booklet inside through there. Right off to the bat of William Shatner making fun of the Cramps on through here, and Weird Al kind of making fun of the Ramones. This is an album of punk artists covering Dr. Demento staples. So you've got Shaving Cream, which is covered here by Uncle Floyd and Ogie. Let's see, Osaka Pop Star doing Fish Heads. William Shatner covering the Cramps, Garbage Man through here. Shonen Knife covering Eat It. There was some other big ones here. Philly Boy Roy covering the Dead Milkmen doing Punk Rock Girl. And one of my favorites, absolute favorites off of this is the group The Vandals covering National Brotherhood Week, which was the old Tom, it's escaping me now, just an old 60s folk comedy tune.
Yeah.
So. But fun stuff if you run across it or if you want to stream it. I'll see if there's some stuff on here, and I'll correct it. I'll find out who originally did National Brotherhood Week, but the Vandals cover is great.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. Now there is so much to choose from. A lot of the great for me. 76 to 79 was kind of the primo time for punk. Then it really got more hardcore. And I think that definitely took over. Even the Ramones eventually, a Subterranean Jungle, tried to Too Young to Die or something. That's where they tried to get harder and just get more people interested again, because old punk was too soft.
They're getting older too, especially what's left of the Ramones. They just bring in a new Ramone. they need to, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yes, they're very interchangeable.
We got Sporty Ramon and
Spicy Ramon,
Spicy Ramon.
Baby Ramon.
Be careful here. Okay. So where do you folks stand on punk rock? Too aggressive, too outside the wheelhouse, or something that you can dip to occasionally to enjoy? Or is it just your wheelhouse and you're like Steve, the punk godfather of Northern Midland, now located to Colorado? I think you're probably more at home out there than you were on your side of town here.
Probably so, but it's harder to get the stuff. It was always easy with you. Well, that's been sitting there for a couple of months, Jim. I might as well just buy it.
Might as well. You get a deal. What the heck, Steve? So let us know, folks. Please touch us. Be careful there. Reach out to us via Facebook or comment on the Spotify page or the YouTube channel. We would love to hear from you. We are coming up, Steve. I can't believe this. We're 90 plus episodes deep here. We're going to have to do something fun coming up, I think. We'll see.
Okay. We're ticking away here, getting close.
Oh, man. So that, I think, will do it for this week of two guys talking about records, in this case, punk records. Till next time, my name is Jim, and I own a record store.
And I'm Steve, and I have a big punk collection.
All right, look like this. Yeah!
Yeah.
Have a good week, Steve. Talk to you later.
Yep,
Thanks.
You too, Jim. Bye.